for the future hijacker teams. O'Neill had discovered that some of his Al-Qaeda targets, quote-unquote, were involved in some very un-Islamic fundamentalist activities, including drug smuggling, teenage prostitution, and blood diamond dealing.
Los Angeles, 1997. A major local, state, and federal drug investigation sours. The suspects? Israeli organized crime, with operations in New York, Miami, Las Vegas, Canada, Israel, and Egypt. The allegations? Cocaine and ecstasy trafficking, and sophisticated white-collar credit card and computer fraud.
The financial trail led O'Neill to a network of bank accounts in London, Dubai, the Isle of Man, Guernsey, and Jersey. The network investigated coincided exactly with the activities being carried out by the Russian-Israeli mafia and its links to diamond, drug, and weapons dealers that was especially active in New York and Florida. The future 9/11 hijackers and their Israeli shadows had more than living in the same neighborhoods and frequenting the same bars, video rental stores, and rental mailbox stores in common.
Who shipped out the steel rubble of the World Trade Center towers? That would be none other than Metals Management, headed by Jew Alan D. Ratner. The most critical evidence to determine what really caused the towers to collapse was quickly destroyed after being sold to Asian smelters. Ratner, of Metals Management, now merged with the Sims Group, and the New York-based Hugo New Schnitzer East, profited from this criminal destruction of evidence. Ratner sold the World Trade Center steel to Chinese companies, reportedly selling more than 50,000 tons of steel to a Shanghai steel company for $120 per ton. Ratner had paid about $70 per ton for this crime scene evidence. Another central element of understanding how the attacks could be pulled off by the Jewish power elite would be a careful review of the number of dual Israeli citizens serving in the various branches of our government. The primary question here is, how could a person be a citizen of two countries at the same time? It's abundantly clear that such a person would have their loyalties split between the country of residence and the other country they hold citizenship in. Therefore, whose interests would they be working for, the United States or Israel? As reported in a document titled The Israel Lobby and U.S. Foreign Policy, Harvard professor Stephen Walt and University of Chicago professor John Mersheimer focused attention on the strong Israeli lobby which has a powerful influence over American foreign policies. They detail the influence the lobby has exerted, forming a series of international policies which can be viewed as in direct opposition to the interests and security of the American people. These acts and policies are more often than not carried out by U.S. government appointees who hold powerful positions and who are dual American Israeli citizens. Since the policies they support are often exclusively beneficial to Israel, often to the detriment of America, it has been argued that their loyalties are misdirected. A few classic examples can be cited here. Jonathan J. Pollard was an American-Israeli citizen who worked for the U.S. government. He is well known because he stole more secrets from the U.S. than has any other spy in American history. During his interrogation, Pollard said he felt compelled to put the interests of my state ahead of his own. Although as a U.S. Navy counterintelligence specialist, he had a top-secret security clearance. By my state, he meant the state of Israel. Literally tens of thousands of Americans holding U.S. passports admit they feel a primary allegiance to the state of Israel. In many instances, these Americans vote in Israeli elections, wear Israeli uniforms, and fight in Israeli wars. Many are actively engaged both in the confiscation of Palestinian lands and in the Israeli political system. Three examples follow. Rabbi Meir Kahan founded the militant Jewish Defense League in the U.S. in the 1960s, then immigrated to Israel, where he was elected to the Knesset until he was shot and killed at one of the U.S. fundraisers fundraising rallies in 1990. The Brooklyn-born rabbi shuttled between Tel Aviv and New York, where he recruited militant American Jews for his activities in Israel against Palestinians. He claimed to be a dual citizen of America and Israel. Another Jew, James Mahone, from Alexandria, Virginia, reportedly was on a secret mission to kill PLO chairman Yasser Arafat when he was shot in 1980 by an unknown assailant. When he was shot, Mahone held an American M16 in his hand and a U.S. passport in his pocket. Alan Harry Goodman, an American Jew who left his home in Baltimore, Maryland, flew to Israel and served in the Israeli army. Then, on 11th April 1982, armed with an Uzi submachine gun, he walked alone to Al-Aqsa, Jerusalem's most holy Islamic shrine, where he opened fire, killing 2 Palestinians and wounding others. Both the U.S. and Israeli governments played down the incident, as did the Jewish-controlled media. Most recently, U.S. Navy Petty Officer Ariel J. Weinman, while serving at or near Bahrain, Mexico, and Austria, quote, with intent or reason to believe it would be used to the injury of the United States or to the advantage of a foreign nation, Israel, attempted to communicate, deliver, or transmit classified, confidential, and secret information relating to the national defense to a representative, officer, agent, or employee of a foreign government, unquote. Weinman was apprehended on 26 March after being listed as a, quote, deserter by his command, unquote, according to the U.S. Navy. The information he gathered was supplied to Israel. On 22nd April 2008, Ben Ami Kaddish, a Connecticut-born U.S. dual citizen who worked in New Jersey, was arrested and charged with giving top-secret nuclear information and details about the U.S. Patriot missile to an Israeli agent, the same agent involved with the J. Pollard case. The espionage charges reportedly stem from acts committed in the 1980s. These activities, like the ones with convicted spy Pollard, were immediately denied by Israel. Pollard pleaded guilty in 1986. It is further reported that Israeli officials instructed Kaddish to lie to U.S. investigators. Kaddish was scheduled to be arraigned on Tuesday afternoon, 22nd April 2008, at U.S. District Court in Manhattan, authorities said. The examples of Kahan, Mahone, Goodman, and Weinman raise the question of when a U.S. citizen ceases to be, or should cease to be, a U.S. citizen. U.S. law at one time clearly stated that an American citizen owed first allegiance to the United States. A U.S. citizen should not fight in a foreign army or hold high office in a foreign country without risking expatriation. What happened? It was the 1940 Nationality Act. In Section 401E of the 1940 Nationality Act, provides that a U.S. citizen, whether by birth or naturalization, quote, shall lose his U.S. nationality by voting in a political election in a foreign state, unquote. This law was tested many times. In 1958, for instance, an American citizen named Perez voted in a Mexican election. The case went to the Supreme Court, where the majority opinion held that Perez must lose his American nationality. The court said Congress could provide for expatriation as a reasonable way of preventing embarrassment to the United States in its foreign relations. But then something very odd happened. In 1967, an American Jew, Beis Ephraim, received an exemption that set a precedent exclusively for American Jews. Ephraim, born in Poland in 1895, immigrated to America in 1912 and became a naturalized U.S. citizen in 1926. In 1950, aged 55, he immigrated to Israel and became an Israeli citizen. In 1951, Ephraim voted in an Israeli Knesset election and in 5 political elections that followed. So, by all standards, he lost his American citizenship, right? Wrong. After living in Israel for a decade, Ephraim wished to return to New York. In 1960, he asked the U.S. consulate in Haifa for an American passport. The Department of State refused the application, invoking Section 401E of the Nationality Act, the same ruling that had stripped the American citizen named Perez of his U.S. citizenship. Attorneys acting for Ephraim took his case to a Washington, D.C. district court, which upheld the law. Then, his attorneys appealed to the Court of Appeals. This court also upheld the law. The attorneys for Ephraim then moved the case on to the Supreme Court. Here, with Supreme Court Justice Abby Fortas, Lyndon Johnson's former attorney and one of the most powerful Jews, casting the swing vote, the court voted 5-4